Hello, friends. It's me, Truth. I hope this message finds you well. I suppose you're all still safe at home, but for me, it's going to be a little while before we can meet up again. Long story short, our journey was interrupted when we crash-landed on a Rimworld planet. According to locals, we've ended up in a great desert at the west end of the let's just call it the wasteland. With me is Mr. Unhandy, the Neanderthal of our crew, Lenny, one of the pigskins, and my buddy Jared, the counselor. Oh, and Smokey, the horse. She's here too. We crashed in the middle of the desert, but a lot of our supplies crashed down pretty close by, too. There was some debate about whether we ought to strike out and search for civilization, but we figured it'd be safer to just build up a little outpost where we landed, rather than try to carry all our things along with us. If we keep at it, we can probably figure out a way off this planet and back home, so wish us as much luck as you can. Lenny, as it turns out, is a pretty diligent workhorse, or work pig, I guess. She got busy right away setting up a pen for Smokey in a spot we hoped we would have enough grass to feed her for a little while. That used up a lot of our scant wood, though, so we might have to figure something else out for her. Unhandy, as it turns out, is, well, not all that handy. We figured out he's pretty fit for carving stone blocks, though, so that's what he's going to spend a lot of time doing. He insists that he's a good cook, but I'm not sure how much any of us believe him. Maybe one of these days we'll get a cook stove set up for him so he can wow us. Jared, as it so happens, is also not that handy. But he brought a telescope with him, which miraculously survived the crash in good condition, and that's been fun enough for us. We like having Jared around, but he's also a major night owl, so we don't see too much of him. We landed with a pretty good supply of survival meals, but those won't last forever, and there's hardly a thing to eat here otherwise, so Lenny quickly found some decent soil to till and planted some crops for both us and the horse. She figures we'll have something to eat by the time we run out of our packaged food. I think she might care more about Smokey's well-being than ours, though, so I had to tell her to focus on planting the human food more than the horse food. I figured Jared might get some work done for everyone in the night, but as it turns out, there really isn't much he knows how to do. Says he spent most of the night cleaning up, then kinda wandering around in the desert. Also says he noticed a strange, alluring monolith out in the desert sands, almost seeming to beckon to him. I gotta see if Lenny can teach him how to plant crops or something, because he clearly needs something to occupy his mind. If nothing else, we can get him to haul in some chunks of stone for Unhandy to carve in the morning. I mentioned the pen we built for Smokey and how we hoped she'd have enough grass to eat, but well, that sure didn't last long. Do you think our packaged survival meals are fit for horses to eat? Might be our only choice in these conditions. After a couple weeks, I started calling our crash group the Truth Fairies, and I think everyone else is willing enough to humor me. We're also calling our little settlement New Gemspears, which is inspired by a beloved old story. We've been here for this planet's whole spring now, and so far there's only been one act of hostility from the locals. As it so happened, this was when we had a friendly caravan from a nearby settlement stopping in to attempt to trade with us. When we were distracted, some little crook snuck in and scampered off with all the electronic components we'd stockpiled from the crash. Unhandy tried to chase him down, but just wasn't fast enough. The traders saw it happen, and they called that guy one of the garbage chokers. Sure wish they had done something to help stop him, because then we had to pay them some of our silver just to get a few components back for ourselves. I can't shake the feeling this was some kind of conspiratorial scam. Well, that's about all the news from New Gemspears. We're sleeping in some cozy little stone huts thanks to Lenny, and soon we might even have a wind turbine to generate some electricity. Best wishes to you and yours, and I'll try to raid again this summer. Truth. Hello, friends. Our first desert summer is about over now, and it's been a productive season. Remember in my last letter when I wrote that I was considering sharing our packaged survival meals with the horse? Well, that didn't go over too well. Turns out, not only can a horse eat survival meals, but they love to eat survival meals. We started to run low on food for ourselves, and everyone reasoned with me that there's no point keeping the horse so well fed if we just end up having to butcher her for an emergency food source one day. I asked what everyone else's ideas were, since she was already well out of grass in her pen. Jared suggested we just hitch Smokey to a post near some grass whenever we find it, and then move her as she finishes eating a patch. It sounded like a lot of trouble, but Jared said he wouldn't mind moving her around day after day. He's kind of an animal guy, I guess. He proposed this plan, and right away we discovered some sheep nearby, so our livestock quadrupled immediately. For a while there, Jared's nights were always busy with the carting around of animals to new patches of grass. He became our outpost's nocturnal shepherd. We've been growing some hay grass for these animals, which should keep them fed through the winter, and eventually we gave Jared some relief from all his shepherding by just planting some dandelions and hitching the animals near that patch of dirt. Seems to be keeping them pretty well satisfied. We did some bodyguard work for a nearby noble one day. We got a message from this knight of the Empire of the Spirit that he'd been ambushed and sought refuge. He was sure the three of us would be more than equipped for the job, and when his pursuer arrived, we all saw he was more than right. This guy must lead a pampered life indeed, because he needed our help fighting off an angry guinea pig. We didn't even wake Lenny up for this because it just wasn't important enough. Jared did his best to take it out with his rifle, but he's not a great shot, so Unhandy just gave it a good poke with his knife. I mentioned before that we were getting electricity up and running, and now we're all getting to reap the benefits. As it turns out, Unhandy really isn't a half-bad cook. I can't tell you how nice it is to have fresh cooked meals after weeks of all this pre-packaged junk. Food supplies did run a little low, and it pains me to say we even had to resort to cooking and eating mushrooms in spite of our faith. I can confidently say I didn't enjoy a moment of it, and I don't even like thinking back on it, but it was a desperate survival situation where we didn't really have a choice. Remember that thief we had back in spring that the locals called a garbage choker? Well, we've had a couple more run-ins with them. A couple club-wielding thugs strolled in, and I'm not even sure what they were after because we shot the first one down before he could even get close, and the second one went down after just a little scuffle. The worst harm we saw was that Jared made an ass out of himself, accidentally shooting our wind turbine. Even scarier than that, we had a run-in with a mad dromedary that caused a little chaos. It gave Lenny a few good kicks outside her bunk, but fortunately for us, Jared's been getting some shooting practice in by hunting iguanas in his spare time, and he was able to take it down after a few shots. We're finally getting some good harvests of rice and hay grass, which is keeping Lenny really busy in the fields. If all goes well, we'll have some potatoes in the coming season too. That is, if Jared manages to stop the dromedaries and other wildlife from eating our crops. The sheep are turning out to be a blessing too. As I write this, Jared and Unhandy are heading out to shear their coats. We've taken on a couple of charitable acts this summer too. One day a wild man came by and basically said he desperately needed 32 silver to save his life. Maybe it was all a lie, but we let him have it just the same. No big loss. Then just yesterday, we welcomed in a couple more refugees who were in an ambushed caravan and say they need about 18 days to get reoriented. So now we're working on hastily building up a couple more bunks for them. I hope they know how hard we're about to work them. Unhandy doesn't like these new people. He got in a fight with one of them when he got called a criminal. They've also got this weird habit of trying to sleep in our new freezer. Soon they'll have their own beds, but we'll be keeping a close eye on them for sure. If they decide not to stick around, then hey, nice new bedrooms for the rest of us to use. That's about all the news from new Gemspears. You'll probably hear from me again this fall, when I expect we'll be feasting on potatoes and camel meat and some nice wool coats. Until then, best wishes from Truth. Hello, friends. Things have taken a bit of a downturn since my last letter. To follow up, we are indeed wearing some warm fur coats, and we did indeed feast on some potatoes, but they barely got us halfway through the fall season. The situation has gotten dire enough that I don't know what we're gonna do about the winter time. Don't get me wrong, I think we'll be staying warm. And it's not because we're in a desert, because maybe nobody told you this, but apparently it can get ungodly cold in deserts, even in the fall. I just don't know how we'll keep ourselves fed, considering all the new lodgers we're taking on. The 2 refugees I told you about in my summer letter, their names are Pepper and Rozzy. Nobody seems to like them very much, except maybe Lenny. Unhandy has gotten into 2 fights with Pepper and 1 fight with Rozzy, and even Jared had a scuffle with Pepper himself. It's getting to be a real pain in the ass to get all these people to get along. I told Unhandy he had to let Rozzy borrow his bed, given that he acted like a horse's ass and beat her up so bad when they fought. Shortly after this was when he had his 2nd fight with Pepper. Spirits got pretty low with all this fighting going on. I think Lenny didn't pay it much mind because she was so busy harvesting all our plants in the first days of fall. At first the fights were a nuisance, but then it got weird. Rozzy made it weird, and Jared kept it weird. Both of them got this idea in their heads to go into our little graveyard of garbage chokers and dig up a corpse. The same corpse. Jared probably went for that one because the dirt was still fresh from when Rozzy was there the first time. And drag it over to our dining room table for all to see. Maybe they intended it as a threat to the others, trying to scare them or something, I don't know. I'm just telling myself they were stressed and not in their right state of mind. Lenny, bless her heart, decided to try and get everyone to party out back by the wind turbines. Unhandy and Rozzy were there, and I hoped it would get them to smooth things over a little, but Rozzy just went inside after a few minutes saying it was too cold out. She's sure not lying either. I can't remember when we last had a day above freezing. So Pepper and Rozzy have been here since summer, but now we have yet another visitor staying with us. Her name's Black, and she says she's staying here for a few weeks to study other cultures. In other words, she'll be here all winter doing no work. But according to her, there's a nice assault rifle in it for us if she leaves satisfied with the experience. I figure if she's coming to our little colony to stay the winter and do nothing but eat our food, she should count herself lucky to have made it out not frozen to death, not make our payment conditional on her happiness. But we'll try our best, I suppose. Our crops and stored meat ran out very early into fall, but we've had a few unexpected boons that are keeping us going. We've been lucky, but I'm not sure we should count on that luck to hold out. On the 10th, we discovered a tame emu in the wild nearby, and we kept it around for a couple days, then slaughtered it when we ran out of food again. Later that same day, a migratory pack of guinea pigs happened to be crossing by near our colony, so we sent Unhandy, Lenny, and Pepper out with knives and axes to kill as many as they could. They came back covered in blood and rodent bites, but they also secured us enough food for several more days. On top of that, we've got 2 pregnant sheep out in the pen, so if this luck keeps up, we'll have some emergency rations to keep us going if there aren't enough animals to hunt through the winter. If the fall has already been this cold, I know we won't be in for an easy winter. I'll keep writing though. Wish us luck. Until then, best wishes from Truth. Hello friends. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. This winter has been hell. Let me say first of all that we are all alive and more or less well, so we should count our blessings in that regard. Other than that, the hard times have pretty thoroughly outnumbered the good. But I'm writing this on the first day of spring, so hopefully our fortunes here will turn around. On the first day of winter, we had a fire break out due to a faulty heater built in Jared's room. He almost slept right through it, amazingly, probably because he was just so relieved to feel any kind of warmth lately. There wasn't anywhere for it to spread, though, so it was a pretty quick repair job. Yes, as it turns out, not only does it get cold in a desert winter, but it snows, and snows hard. As I thought might happen, we've had to slaughter all the sheep one by one. It was a series of compromises. At first it was, let's wait for one of the sheep to give birth, then we can slaughter that one and still have a breeding pair. Then it was, let's slaughter the ram, so then we'll still potentially be able to buy a new male in the future to keep things going. Then it was, we have to slaughter the pregnant sheep, but at least we'll have one lamb to keep around, and it won't eat as much. Eventually, even the old mare Smokey had to be butchered to keep us alive. I hope now she's in some place where she gets to eat all the packaged survival meals she wants. Those were her favorite. We intended to keep the lamb around a little longer, but Lenny slaughtered it one day in a fit of rage. Probably happened because Unhandy started a fight with her, which had her laid up for several days with injuries. He's fought just about everybody who's lived here at this point. A couple more guinea pigs showed up on our land, charging at us with a thirst for blood, probably maddened by this intense cold. Joke's on them though, because they got absolutely pounced on by a half-starved Lenny, Pepper, and Jared. They basically just meant a snack for a couple of us, but we were more than happy to have them. We have another person living with us now, and he's kind of an oddball. He introduced himself as Alexei at first, but after staying with us through a good bit of winter, he said his real name is Connor. He wanted a place to conduct some kind of research, and also told us he has the power of a healer if we're ever in trouble. I don't know if I trust him, but he's been friendly enough, I suppose. We recently built a little shelter over our rock carving workshop, and he's been spending most of his time doing research in there. We even set up a little lamp for him to use through the nights. We might not have let Connor in if not for the fact that Pepper and Rozzy recently decided to strike out from our colony in the dead of winter. They said they would never forget what we've done. And I think it was supposed to come across as an expression of gratitude, but it sounded more like, if we freeze to death out in that desert, we'll be better off than we were here. There's been virtually no hunting all winter. I suppose the animals around here must hibernate or something. All except the guinea pigs, and apparently our land sits right on their migratory path. Another pack of them wandered through nearby, and we sent Unhandy, Jared, and Connor, at the time he was still Alexei to us, out for another kill frenzy. Unhandy did the majority of the slaughtering, as the other two are not great shots with their guns. Sometimes Jared had better luck just beating them with his rifle. We got a few days of food out of that, but it was a rough few days, because every time we got hungry, someone had to trudge out into the snow to find one of those frozen guinea pig carcasses. At least there weren't any wild scavengers around to swipe them from us. A few particularly hardy sheep found their way to us, and at first I thought how nice it'll be to have some livestock in reserve again, but I knew they probably wouldn't last more than a day or two before we had to butcher them all. At least it saved some of our electricity usage, not having to keep their enclosure heated. Even with the heaters we've built in the bedrooms, some people are complaining about having to sleep in the cold. I told them, if you think your room's too cold, you're welcome to spend a few minutes outside and see how you like your room then. Apparently Jared's mom came to visit us in a trade caravan one day. I say apparently because said trade caravan left before exchanging 2 words with us, because it was just too damn cold outside. Here's an odd turn of events for you. We got radioed by some kind of, machine intelligence, and it offered us a valuable machine component and some silver if we built it a primitive monument out of stone. Now, you might be thinking we were too busy just trying to keep food in our bellies to worry about something so frivolous. But as it so happens, we got this message at a time when we were still sitting pretty on a pile of dead guinea pigs and 3 alive sheep, so now we have that sitting over behind our dining hall. Lenny and Unhandy got in another fight later on, and that caused Lenny to have another tantrum, at which point she smashed our telescope to pieces. None of us really know how to build another one, not even Connor, so it looks like our stargazing days are over. A transport pod crashed near us one day. We rescued the person inside who was hurt pretty bad, and as I hear it, they eventually got home and told their people that they had been taken care of very well. I can't imagine why they said such a thing, because even I thought the circumstances were pretty horrifying, and I live here. If I had to guess, they probably think we're all out of our minds, and to speak ill of us would be to invite us back to them in the form of nightmares. As you can probably imagine, we don't have much in the way of medical treatment. Basically no medicine to speak of, let alone anyone with a great bedside manner. We did have one warm bed since Pepper and Rosie had left, but we almost never had food to offer. One day when Unhandy butchered one of our sheep, when everyone was particularly starved, they didn't even wait for him to cook the meat before rushing into the freezer to grab a handful while it was still warm. There wasn't even anything left for Unhandy to cook that day. That's about when the nightmare scenario began. We've had a few more unsuccessful raids from desperate outsiders, and given that nobody wants to go out digging in the frozen earth in below zero temperatures, they tend to spend a while lying outside on the frozen ground. Out of sight, out of mind, for the most part. See, Jared remembered one of these dead raiders lying outside, and decided to drag that corpse into the room of our transport pod crash victim, and by some means, forced that person to become a cannibal. He did this twice, and then even fed some of the corpse to Lenny, who was recovering from one of those many fights with Unhandy at the time. A little later, another transport pod crashed near us. The person inside was afflicted with some kind of paralysis, couldn't hardly move at all. Around the same time, we had just slaughtered our last sheep, and were wondering, with mounting panic, where our next meal might be coming from. I tried to ignore the glint of inspiration in Jared's eye, when we got a literal blessing from above in the form of a transport pod full of chicken eggs crashing nearby, and miraculously leaving several dozen eggs intact enough to eat. We had a bit of a discussion on what we should do with this new person, and thankfully this conversation happened on full stomachs. Lenny said maybe we could wait for her to recover, and she might be a valuable worker for us. Unhandy said maybe we could trade her off to a caravan and see if they'd give us any food for her. Jared said maybe we ought to keep her around just in case, and thankfully I didn't get the chance to ask him what the hell he meant by that. As it so happened, Connor overheard us talking during a break from his research, and he said, "Why don't I just heal her?" I had forgotten that Connor proclaimed himself a healer when he first showed up, so instead of laying into Jared like I wanted to, I just redirected to Connor and said, "Sure, man, I forgot you're a healer, so why don't you go lay hands on her paralyzed nerves, and we'll see if she wants to make a life for herself here." I was honestly just being a wise ass, but he didn't get such an impression at all, and walked off to her room. I tell you, friends, by God, he put his hands on her, and in just a short moment, she was back on her feet, walking and talking. All my frustrations with Jared's creepiness and Unhandy's repeated fight picking and the constant worrying about food got left behind there. This Connor is a strange guy indeed, but now we do in fact have a new worker in our home. She says her name is Adkins, but that we can call her Addie instead, and she's good at mining. We've made it to the first day of spring, and there are some traders pulling up now who might be able to offer us more food. We're not out of the woods yet, because the growing season has not yet even gotten started. There's still snow on the ground, in fact. But if blessings like these can occur, then maybe we have what it takes to make it. Happy New Year. I'll write again soon. Until then, best wishes from Truth. This video is made possible by donators such as these. Consider this a pilot episode in what I'm hoping is going to be a new series, depending on how successful it is and how motivated I am to continue it. If you would like to see your name featured in this series, consider donating for future episodes. I think starting in the second year, I'm going to start naming new colonists after people who have donated money to me and my channel. So there is all the more incentive for you to get in on that. Stay tuned for year 2 of Letters from New Gemspears.